My name is Dr. Elena Rodriguez, and I am a former deep-sea marine biologist who spent 12 years working for the National Oceanic Research Institute. What I am about to tell you will fundamentally change how you view our oceans and what lives in the deepest parts of our planet. In 2008, I was part of a classified deep-sea expedition that descended deeper into the Pacific Ocean than any human had ever gone before. We were supposed to be studying extremophile bacteria in the Mariana Trench. Instead, we discovered that the deepest parts of our oceans are inhabited by intelligences that have been watching human civilization for millennia. For 15 years, I have been bound by non-disclosure agreements that threatened not just my career, but my life. 3 members of my original research team are dead. But I'm 52 years old now, and I've decided that humanity deserves to know the truth about what's really down there in the abyss. We are not alone on this planet. We never have been. And the beings that share our world aren't from space. They're from the crushing depths of our own oceans. In early 2008, I was recruited for Project Deep Reach, a joint operation between NOAA, the Navy, and several international research organizations. The official mission was to use new deep-sea submersible technology to explore the deepest accessible parts of the Mariana Trench, specifically targeting depths below 11,000 meters. Our team consisted of 8 specialists, marine biologists, geologists, and engineers. We were told we were looking for evidence of life in extreme conditions, studying how organisms could survive in the crushing pressure and absolute darkness of the deepest ocean trenches. The submersible we used was unlike anything that had been deployed before. The Abyss Explorer was capable of withstanding pressures that would instantly crush conventional deep-sea vessels. With life support systems designed for extended operations at depths no human had ever reached. Our base of operations was a research vessel positioned directly above Challenger Deep, the deepest known point in Earth's oceans. For the first month of the expedition, everything proceeded normally. We descended in stages, collecting samples, documenting previously unknown species, and mapping the ocean floor. By March 2008, we had reached a depth of 11,500 meters, deeper than anyone had gone before. That's when our sonar equipment started detecting anomalies. At 11,800 meters depth, our sonar readings showed something that shouldn't exist. Large geometric structures on the ocean floor. Not rock formations, not geological features, but clearly artificial constructions. Dr. James Walsh, our expedition leader, initially thought it was equipment malfunction. But as we descended closer, our external cameras confirmed what the sonar was showing us. There were massive structures built into the ocean floor. Buildings, towers, what appeared to be a city, constructed in the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean. The architecture was unlike anything in human history. The buildings were enormous, some reaching heights of several hundred meters, but designed to withstand the incredible pressure of nearly 12 kilometers of water above them. They were constructed from materials that seemed to absorb and redirect light, making them difficult to observe directly. But most shocking was the fact that they weren't ruins. Lights were visible through translucent sections of the structures. Energy signatures indicated active power sources. This wasn't an abandoned ancient city. It was inhabited. We immediately transmitted our findings to the surface and within hours received orders that changed everything. The mission was now classified at the highest levels. All communications were routed through military channels, and we were instructed to make direct contact. The equipment we'd been given suddenly made more sense. Along with our scientific instruments, we carried what we'd been told were emergency communication devices. These turned out to be sophisticated translation and contact protocols, designed specifically for non-human interaction. Dr. Sarah Chen, our communications specialist, activated the contact systems and began broadcasting mathematical sequences and basic symbolic representations, the universal language approach used by SETI researchers. The response was immediate and terrifying. Our submersible was suddenly surrounded by vehicles that had emerged from the depths below us. They were massive, each one larger than our research vessel on the surface, and moved through the water with impossible speed and agility despite the crushing pressure. The vehicles weren't mechanical in any way we understood. They seemed organic, almost biological, but clearly artificial. They pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that appeared to be some form of communication. Then we heard the voice. Speaking through our communication systems in perfect English, a voice said, "Surface dwellers, you have descended beyond your permitted depth. This domain has been restricted to your species for your own protection." Dr. Walsh responded, "This is Dr. James Walsh of the Deep Reach Expedition. We come in peace as researchers and explorers." The response was immediate. Your species was granted dominion over the surface waters and continental shelves. The deep ocean remains under our stewardship. Your presence here violates ancient agreements. Ancient agreements? We had no knowledge of any agreements between humanity and deep-sea intelligences. Over the following hours, through careful communication, we learned the truth about Earth's oceans and humanity's place on this planet. The beings we had encountered called themselves the Deep Ones, though that was a rough translation of a concept that encompassed both their identity and their relationship to the ocean depths. They had existed in Earth's oceans for millions of years, long before land-based life had evolved beyond primitive forms. They explained that Earth had always been primarily an ocean world, with the surface lands being a relatively recent development. From their perspective, humans were newcomers who had been granted temporary use of the surface and shallow waters. But the deep ocean had always remained their domain. The city we had discovered was just one of thousands scattered across the ocean floors of the world. These weren't colonies or settlements. They were the original cities of Earth, predating human civilization by geological ages. The Deep Ones had been monitoring human development since our species first began ocean travel. They had watched our progress from primitive rafts to sailing ships to modern vessels, and had generally maintained a policy of non-interference as long as humans stayed within the boundaries they had established. According to the Deep Ones, contact had been made with human civilizations multiple times throughout history. Ancient maritime cultures had encountered them and established boundaries. Humans could use the surface waters and coastal regions, but the deep ocean would remain off-limits. These agreements explained many of the ocean taboos and deep water superstitions that had existed in maritime cultures throughout history. The fear of the deep ocean, the legends of sea monsters, the warnings about venturing too far from shore. These weren't primitive superstitions, but cultural memories of actual contact with non-human intelligences. But modern human civilization had forgotten these ancient agreements. Our technology had advanced to the point where we could penetrate depths that had been considered permanently inaccessible. And we were beginning to violate boundaries that had been respected for thousands of years. The Deep Ones explained that human activities were becoming problematic for their civilization. Deep-sea mining operations were disrupting their cities. Military submarine activities were interfering with their transportation systems. Ocean pollution was affecting their ecosystems in ways that threatened their survival. Most concerning to them was human deep-sea exploration. They had tolerated surface naval activities and even shallow submersible operations. But our increasing ability to reach extreme depths was bringing us into direct contact with their civilization. They weren't hostile, but they were concerned. From their perspective, humans were a rapidly expanding species with destructive tendencies, and our penetration into their domain represented a potential existential threat. The voice we were communicating with made their position clear. Your species has demonstrated remarkable adaptability and technological progress, but also shows concerning disregard for environmental stewardship and tendency toward territorial expansion. The deep ocean cannot sustain both our civilizations. To show us the extent of their presence and capabilities, our submersible was given what could only be described as a tour of their domain. We were escorted through underwater canyons filled with massive cities, each one larger and more complex than anything humans had ever constructed. The scale was overwhelming. Architectural structures that stretched for kilometers, inhabited by creatures that had clearly achieved technological advancement far beyond human capabilities. But the most shocking revelation came when we were shown the extent of their monitoring systems. The Deep Ones had been observing human activities not just in the deep ocean, but throughout all of Earth's waters. They had tracking systems that monitored every ship, every submarine, every offshore platform. They showed us real-time displays of naval activities happening thousands of miles above us. They knew the location of every nuclear submarine, every research vessel, every commercial shipping lane. They had been watching everything, cataloging human maritime expansion and growing increasingly concerned about our impact on their world. As our tour continued, the purpose of our contact became clear. This wasn't just a chance encounter, it was a deliberate warning. The Deep Ones explained that human activities had reached a threshold that threatened their civilization's stability. Ocean pollution was poisoning their cities. Deep-sea mining was destroying sacred sites. Military activities were disrupting their communication networks. But most critically, human deep-sea exploration was beginning to reveal their existence to surface dwellers who weren't prepared for that knowledge. Your species responds to discovery of resources with exploitation, the voice explained. If your governments learn of our cities, our technology, our resources, they will attempt to claim them. This cannot be permitted. They weren't threatening military action, but they were making it clear that they had the capability to protect their domain if necessary. The vehicles surrounding us could easily destroy our submersible or prevent our return to the surface. But they preferred negotiation to conflict. The Deep One's message was simple. Human deep-sea activities had to be scaled back immediately, or they would be scaled back for us. They demanded the cessation of deep-sea mining operations below 6,000 meters depth. They required the rerouting of submarine activities away from their major cities. And most importantly, they insisted that knowledge of their existence be restricted to a very small group of surface dwellers who could ensure their domain remained protected. In return, they would continue their policy of non-interference with surface human activities. They wouldn't interfere with shipping, naval operations in approved areas, or coastal development. They would remain hidden, allowing human civilization to continue its development without the complications that would arise from public knowledge of their existence. But if these conditions weren't met, if human activities continued to threaten their civilization, they would be forced to take more direct action to protect their domain. To ensure we understood the seriousness of their position, the deep ones demonstrated capabilities that made their threats credible. We watched as one of their vehicles approached a section of ocean floor and, using what appeared to be controlled geological manipulation, created a new trench several kilometers long and hundreds of meters deep. The ocean floor was reshaped as easily as a human might dig in sand. Then they demonstrated their control over ocean currents and temperatures. Within minutes, the water around our submersible became noticeably warmer, then colder, then returned to normal. They could manipulate the fundamental forces of the ocean environment with technologies we couldn't begin to understand. Most impressive was their demonstration of what they called depth barriers. Using some form of pressure manipulation, they created a zone where our submersible's instruments showed we were at 8,000 meters depth, while our actual position remained unchanged. They could effectively control human access to deep ocean areas by manipulating the physical properties of the water itself. The message was clear. If they wanted to prevent human deep-sea activities, they had the technology to do it. Our return to the surface was unlike any previous deep-sea mission. Instead of conducting normal post-mission debriefing and data analysis, we were immediately quarantined by military personnel who had been waiting for our return. All of our equipment was confiscated. Our recorded data, our samples, our photographs, everything was classified at levels that made it essentially disappear from any official records. The 8 members of our team were separated and relocated to different positions that ensured we had no contact with each other. We were required to sign documents that not only prohibited us from discussing our discoveries, but threatened severe consequences for any violation of our silence. The official record showed that Project Deep Reach had been terminated due to equipment failures at extreme depth. Our discoveries were explained as instrument malfunctions caused by the unprecedented pressure conditions. Over the following years, I watched as deep-sea exploration programs were quietly scaled back. Major mining operations in deep ocean areas were cancelled or suspended. Military submarine activities were restricted to specific approved zones. The changes were gradual and explained through environmental regulations, budget constraints, and technological limitations. But I knew the real reason. The surface world was complying with the deep one's ultimatum. However, not everyone who had been part of the program was content to remain silent. Dr. James Walsh died in a diving accident in 2011. He was an experienced diver exploring a shallow reef, but somehow became disoriented and drowned in 20 feet of water. Dr. Sarah Chen was found dead in her apartment in 2014, apparently from a rare allergic reaction to shellfish. She had never shown any food allergies before and had been in perfect health. Marine engineer Tom Rodriguez died in 2017 when his boat was found capsized in calm weather off the California coast. He was an expert sailor who had navigated much more challenging conditions throughout his career. 3 deaths in 6 years, all members of our deep-sea contact team, all under circumstances that were unusual but not suspicious enough to attract official investigation. For the past decade, I've been monitoring ocean conditions and deep-sea activities, trying to understand whether the agreement with the deep ones has been maintained. The signs are mixed. Surface compliance has generally continued. Major deep-sea mining operations remain limited, and extreme depth exploration has been scaled back. But private companies and international operations are beginning to push boundaries again. More concerning, I've been detecting unusual ocean phenomena that suggest the deep ones are becoming more active. Unexplained temperature variations in deep ocean areas, unusual current patterns, and increasing reports of deep-sea equipment malfunctions. Most disturbing are the recent reports from commercial fishing operations and offshore platforms of unusual sonar contacts and unexplained underwater lights. I believe the deep ones are increasing their monitoring of human activities, possibly in preparation for more direct intervention. I'm breaking my silence because I believe the agreement may be failing, and the consequences could be catastrophic for human civilization. If the deep ones decide that surface humanity cannot be trusted to respect their domain, if they determine that our activities pose an existential threat to their civilization, they have demonstrated the capability to severely disrupt human maritime activities. They could disrupt global shipping, disable naval operations, or even manipulate ocean currents and temperatures in ways that would affect global climate patterns. The majority of human civilization depends on ocean-based transportation and resources. Disruption of these systems could cause economic and social collapse. But I also believe that open communication might prevent such a catastrophe. If surface governments acknowledged the existence of the deep ones and entered into formal agreements that respected their territorial claims, it might be possible to establish a stable coexistence. The current policy of denial and secrecy serves no one's interests. Surface humanity remains ignorant of the true nature of our planet and the need to respect the rights of its original inhabitants. Meanwhile, the deep ones remain uncertain about human intentions and capabilities. We are not alone on this planet. The Earth's oceans, which cover more than 70% of the surface and represent 99% of the living space on our world, are inhabited by intelligences that predate human civilization by millions of years. These beings have been patient with human expansion into their domain, but that patience is not infinite. Our activities are increasingly threatening their way of life, and they have the capability to respond in ways that could end human maritime civilization. The choice is ours. We can continue to pretend we're the only intelligent life on Earth and risk a conflict we cannot win. Or we can acknowledge the reality of our situation and work toward coexistence with the true masters of this ocean world. My name is Dr. Elena Rodriguez. I descended deeper into Earth's oceans than any human before me, and I discovered that we are visitors on a world that belongs to others. For 15 years, I've kept silent while 3 of my colleagues died to protect this secret. But silence serves no one now. The deep ocean is watching. It's always been watching. And our next decisions will determine whether humanity learns to coexist with the ancient intelligences of the abyss, or whether we face the consequences of our ignorance. The depths are rising. The question is whether we're ready to meet them.